Hello. Welcome to episode 2 of the End of the Beginning podcast. In this episode, we discuss the nature of creativity, energetic resonance, and how to stay open to yourself during deep experiences. We chat about family and relationship patterns and childhood boundaries. We hope that you enjoy what you hear, and if you'd like to submit any questions for upcoming episodes, please contact us at theendofthebeginningpodcast@gmail.com. Alternatively, you can find us on Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Instagram. Thanks for listening.
What did you feel when you listened to it? Do you remember hearing it come up a few times?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're still finding our feet, fleshing it out. We're pretty formless at the moment, which is really nice because we're kind of swimming around.
I like that. That's how I think it should be to begin, but my feeling now is I want to keep it boundless. So it goes where it wants to go. It goes, there's a third party and it's going where it wants to go. Yeah. Also, that it feels vulnerable, but I feel a little clunky this morning. And so even face-to-face is more intense than it is at other moments. Yeah. Because you're sort of I'm in my stuff.
I think it always will be to start with. I don't know if you can get around that.
That's how I feel listening back to the podcast is it's not perfect. And I can think of ways you'd really want to contract and tidy that up a little bit for it to be soundbitey and replicable and all that. It's
You can, but that's also too, sorry to interrupt, but part of me feels that's what we used to do.
Us?
No, as in society. That's what we used to do. We used to edit things up real tight. No no this and that. And so they don't become real conversations. Yeah. And then when people have these conversations, they feel elongated or they don't feel succinct but that's the nature of true conversations, it feels like. The nature of true conversation is clunky sometimes, and it is, meandering. Yeah. But we used to edit everything tight. So everything kind of, I don't know, it feels like it relates back to the authenticity thing of what we talked about last
Beautiful
week.
mess.
Yeah. And I think it just feels like people really want to know who you are.
Yeah. Someone might ask you early dating days or something. Do you identify as a anxious or avoidant attachment?
Really?
Not
people
not
are
as
that
a staple, but it's a
but
little
some
bit
people are aware of it.
Yeah, definitely. It's a little bit love languages.
It's so interesting, the amount of information.
Why would I know about this stuff? It's revealing.
The amount of information, that is available to people now.
Your pop psychology, I suppose it's there, and then how authentically is it being used? But what springs to mind too is it's different methods for different times. Everything kind of burns out. I've heard you push back on, the redundancy of Freud or whatever in certain contexts, and Jung gets a much bigger ride now. I was listening to a Rum Dust thing this week, and he was talking about, because he's a psychiatrist and he's in the Richard Alpert, in his
previous
Western
incarnation.
Yeah, something in sort of pre-awakening, if you like, pre-medicine, because he starts with psilocybin. Yeah. And he's talking about Jung and how, Freud took it to a place and he identified with that as a psychiatric practitioner. Yeah. And then Jung took it to a more exalted place. And it's an unusual holding of it because he's talking about it from a shamanic level, which is such that he goes Freud collected data and interpreted it through the prism of his consciousness, and then Jung took it to different planes. And he uses in this actual example, who's the prodigious child talent? It's Mozart, or which ones? Yeah. So he uses Mozart as an example. Mozart, he describes him as a channel, he would attune to different otherworldly vibrations, different dimensions. Yeah. And he actually, I think he articulates him as a scribe, and he visits these faraway lands and writes it down and brings it back.
Jung said this?
No, Ram Dass said this about Mozart, and then he's using it as, I think, as a reference towards what Jung was to him.
Yeah,
that he was bringing these things back from a different place. But the most important bit is he's talking about it with an open-endedness.
Yeah,
that would be the redundancy, maybe scary bit, or like the stagnance, heaviness of some scientific mechanisms.
Yeah,
is that like they act as if it's objective truth.
Yeah.
So it's like, no, Freud worked it out. That's it. Buddhism has solved it. That's it. I'm much more drawn to, more playful in the sandpit. We can actually pull it apart, and we can add stuff, and we can drop stuff that doesn't serve us. And
well, that's the true scientific method, right?
Like, I think in its purity,
it's constantly unfolding. We've had this kind of weird COVID time where it was like, trust the science, and there was this weird kind of dogma. You know, it became a religion of like, but the science is always unfolding, and they're always dropping ideas and picking new ideas up.
Yeah.
In certain areas. I mean, you listen to Eric Weinstein's stuff, and he talks about the capture of science. He's incredibly frustrated about how static physics is at the moment, how it's wound itself into this string theory kind of conundrum. I just wanted to go back to what you were saying about Jung and Ram Dass, and then, do you need to sneeze? You can sneeze.
Yeah.
It shows that it's real. It's a real sneeze. But just, that thing of Mozart channeling from Tom York has this really interesting, the Radiohead guy.
Oh, yeah.
Has this really interesting thing where he likens it, and I love it because I totally associate with it. He's like, you just put your aerial up into the slipstream.
Yeah.
You know, and hopefully you catch something, you know, like that slipstream of creativity.
Yeah.
And hopefully something catches and comes down the wire to you. But I think any musician that's worth their salt, that has written something they feel is great, will probably tell you that they weren't really
responsible for it.
Yeah, they were in the room and they were the conduit for it. Like, I've had that experience a couple of times.
As in composition, like.
Yeah. You're just like, wow, where's this thing coming from? Like, I remember I wrote a song. It was like a gospel song, and I'm just like this skinny white guy from New Zealand. I was like, writing a gospel song, that's an interesting idea, isn't it? But it just fell out, like it was a message from somewhere else. And the lyrics are very otherworldly, and, you know, but it's amazing how it's songs have a way of like doing that in life. You know, the good ones, they have like a universal appeal, and they have a universal message. And sometimes you get this really weird thing where you write a song, and then 6 months later, the message of the song makes sense now. And it's, you wrote that for your future self, or it came through you, I should say, for your future self.
Yeah.
Which is so interesting. So that idea of playing with time, playing with what is creation, consciousness.
Nothing out of place. Something I used to mull over, chew over a lot, was the, I don't know, sacred, the almost like the gentle nature of creativity, the spontaneous nature of it, the chaotic nature of it. Like, it will emerge when it emerges. How ready can you make the vessel? But if you strangle it out of it, you'll get more and more dilute and trashy.
Well, that's the dance.
Or product.
Yeah.
So like the idea that, I remember thinking this years ago, like you took an artist, I think of writer's block and artistic stagnation. So if someone paints and they paint this amazing, deeply authentic, transcendent whatever, and then somebody else wants to monetize, and which isn't necessarily bad. It's a different vibration, but when it becomes really stifled, when it becomes really stifling is when you're then, you know, mechanizing it, when you're saying, okay, you need how to produce, and it's like, no, it needs a lot more gentleness. To me, that sounds like a yin and a yang thing. It's like you've got to make her, for lack of a better word here, the her that dwells in us as creativity and chaos, if you like, you've got to make her feel incredibly safe, and you've got to actually, okay, this is more interesting to me now. You've got to love the the dearth of creativity as well. You got to love her quiet bits. It's like it's a tantric principle. It's like if you really want to make a woman feel safe, then let her know that all her parts are welcome. That, you know, the birthing and the hot sex and the, you know, the beautiful aesthetic is just as welcome as the chaotic feelings and the unpredictability and the need to process and the, you know, the muddy menstrual complexity of all of her. Now, that has efficacy across the board because that's all of us. That's all our messy bits as well.
So you run into this a lot in music and working with artists, is the writer's block and I'm no good and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's happening more and more because the I guess the coldness of the business aspect, just as it is at the moment.
The disconnect with the
there's
fragility of the creative
a delivery
place.
system, i.e. streaming, that dictates, no, you can't have the intro last this long anymore because people get bored and they move forward. So we've got these technologies that are changing the way we absorb art. We also have a changing, in as far as I can see, we also have a changing meaning of what art is. Art's taking a little bit more of a back seat in terms of, it used to be a reflection of society back at itself. And at the moment, it feels a little more, it's the soundtrack to my life. If you're trying to create music, I believe, that has resonance and that is going to mean things to people, like the music that I've written in my life, I used to write commercial, you know, like music for commercials, and it's like some of the music that I've written for commercials would have millions of people will have heard it, and I was just remunerated for that straight away, and that was it. But the music that really means stuff to me is like I've had people from different parts of the world contact me and say, hey, you know, like that gospel song that I wrote was sung by like a high school choir in Illinois, or, you know, like that's the stuff that I think is amazing. You know, songs of yours get used at a friend's wedding or at my granddad's funeral. Like there's those things, that's the true power of music, I feel like.
What does it feel like? Like, one, to talk about now, and two, in those moments of reflection, because you can see the emotional grandeur in it, but what does it actually feel like in your system? Like, why does it have any value? I mean, it's very romantic and sweet, but what?
From my current perspective, I'm incredibly grateful that I got to express those things out at the time. You know, that I got to kind of give them out, because that's what happens. You have these things in your head. And then these ideas in your head, and sometimes they work better than you thought, and sometimes they don't. The abandoned, you know, the abandoned children. But I feel like, I mean, it's so distant for me, the writing thing, because I haven't done it as an artist for
been supporting
15 years or whatever. Yeah, I've been working with other people and helping other people find which I also find equally fulfilling. Like, I think it's such a beautiful thing to do. What does it feel like when those moments happen? When they're a surprise, they're overwhelming. Like I had friends who I didn't know, and they were walking out, and then my song just started as they're walking out to do the wedding walk. Mm-hmm. What do you call it? The bridal walk, whatever it is. They're walking.
Yeah, it's the introduction of the couple to the community.
Yeah,
I can't remember what
before they do their vows and things. And like I was,
that bit, right?
I was just overwhelmed, like that they decided that this really important part of their life, they wanted to use that bit of music that kind of came out through me. Mm-hmm. But then you let go of it.
So do you feel seen in that moment? Like.
It's interesting, man. Like I had like delusions of grandeur, like all artists do, that like I was going to put this record out and everyone was going to hear it and love it. And I've had some beautiful things. I had a friend say to me that a lovely comment. He said, you know, it took me to places I never knew I wanted to go, which I think is such a beautiful compliment, because it's to try and take someone somewhere unexpected, but they actually love going there. It's like, that's what I love about like bands like Radiohead or Nirvana or like those guys, is, you know, like you thought you were going somewhere and you end up going somewhere else and you love it just as much. I guess it's that thing. Ultimately for me, and this is going back to what your original question was, at some stage you have to let go of it. And it will be what it was going to. It's going to be why it was it's going to be what it's going to be in the world because of, because you honestly made it and released it. I think the delusions of grandeur part of it, for me, was like, I'm going to release this song, I'm going to release this stuff, and it's going to be massive and things like that, has less and less relevance. And I don't say that out of any, negativity. I literally say that from, I would rather make music that I love and I feel very proud of. And it's the same thing with artists that I work with, than put stuff out, have it be really successful, which a few people have done, like they are in the fortunate position of hitting the zeitgeist. Something happens and it explodes, and then they hate the place that they end up. And, a lot of musicians have experienced that thing of like playing the same songs over and over and over and over. That's part of the, that's the work part of it, of the industry. But I don't know, you kind of just have to let go of the songs. You just have to let go of them and let them have the life that they're going to have. And people are going to use them whatever way they want to use them in their life.
Yeah.
It's just a shift. It's just a change in the industry again. I believe all of that's going to be taken over by AI, because the actual connection to artists and them meaning something in your life, like when David Bowie used to put a record out and there'd be a line around the music store, and then the kid would come home and, or, who was it, CNC Music Factory in my time, or Nirvana or Pearl Jam when I got into grunge, you got that record or CD home.
Yeah, unpack the lyric book.
And man, you had to look at the artwork and you're like, oh, this is who the dudes are. And I used to really love like looking at who produced it, who as a
thank
teenager.
You section at on the last page.
Yeah.
The credits.
And you'd be like, no way, he knows that guy from Alice in Chains, or, I'm kind of really sticking with the grunge thing, but you know what I'm saying? Like, that feels like all of that community. I guess that's the thing, isn't it? That community of music, which was the creator and the fan, but it was also the community of creators and the community of fans, has gone virtual. And so there's a disconnect in something that used to be so humanly connected. But I believe that's coming back. I believe that AI will take over the Spotify playlists and things like that, and then something else will come up, because there are still people who love music. There are still people who, when something hits them, and I think that'll happen more and more, a piece of music that's created from an artist's heart, not to fulfill anything other than something, an itch inside them that needs scratching. I truly believe that when that goes out, it hits people. It's happened in this room where people have been singing a song and they've sung through it, and that's the warm-up, and I've got the levels and I'm checking the compressor settings for all you audio nerds out there. It's like, like getting everything right. And then it's like, okay, so this time through, that was really great. You're sounding great, however you want to, pump up the vibes. But then you say to them, what does this song mean to you? Who are you singing to? Are you singing to that person you wrote it about? And where is it? Where is it inside you? And connect to that. And it never fails. It's always infinitely more interesting, more engaging is the word actually, when they sing it with purpose.
Yeah.
Even if it's out of tune, like even if there's technical,
jagged edges.
Exactly, and even if there's technical errors in it. I mean, there's just so many stories throughout musical history of like, that's distorted because it was the best take we got and she was just yelling her guts out.
Fittingly and ironically, it can so easily go, you can wash that word out so quickly, because the most important thing, because it means if Paul's not showing up as Paul, then it's not all that interesting, and it's not all that powerful. It's not all that like I don't know, it doesn't make the room buoyant. What I want to say is there's a vitality that comes through. And yeah, that's also a dialogue about the creative process. So it's beautiful actually when you describe an artist that has the potential to connect with themselves more as they express, which is the only reason you would want to express, is to access yourself and then project art outwards, literal art in the music sense, but everything. Like when you're dialoguing with a human being, I'm going to connect with myself and then share from that place. And it becomes like, I mean, from the spiritual point of view, it's quite esoteric, but I am a thing that I'm going to project outwards.
Yeah.
So
I love what you're saying.
Right. So
like I love that it's not
then,
just necessarily about physical manifesting art. These things can roll out into your life.
Yeah.
You can express your life as art.
So funnily enough, I think any creative exercise that you would want is sponsored by that at its best.
What I do love though, and I think has a whole ton of meat on the bone for me, is the fascination that it has become hard for people to truly be themselves. How's that possible?
Well, there's a paradoxical nature to the dialogue, because while we've been kind of reared in a time that's like, hey, you know, are you okay, in inverted commas, is a thing in Australian culture that was about men's health, right? That let's ask, let's normalize asking, are you okay? And as soon as you start to practice that, you're met with the fact that you don't want to talk to just anyone about how you're doing.
Yeah.
So there's this concept of vibrational resonance, actually. I want to go to a place where space can be held in a healthy way. If you go and talk to, you know, the idea that like we'd all just be ourselves around everybody, it's like you don't have sex in front of an audience, generally speaking. You don't, if you could really choose and you knew what childbirth was, you'd have a very specific team present. So really, it's about energetic resonance. So yeah, we would like to be more in touch with healthy emotional expression and not repressed. But at the other end of that stick, in a really important way, as they balance one another out, is that it's really self-loving to share the right thing with the right person. And that's a level of discernment that might be advanced and might take some practice. But something like feeling into your body and feeling whether a thing feels right or not, feeling into your inner world and seeing what feels inspired or not. What comes to mind straight away is that's like winning the lottery of sorts. Like that's like a really valuable way to live. If everybody wants wealth in our culture, which is, let's say, neither good nor bad, I think there's some amazing aspects to it. Because on at least a level, it's about recognizing that you've got a birthright to lead a full life. And if we can just hover in that space in an imagination way, in an imaginative way, then we don't even need to include layers like, yeah, but whenever I have something, someone else doesn't. It takes it away. And there's only, there's one pie we've all got to split. But if we can just give ourselves permission to dance in that space of, I came here and part of my intention was to experience a lot of fullness and not just to sit in lack perpetually.
And yet, does the lack give the fullness meaning?
Totally.
Because without it, it doesn't exist.
Yeah. I think it's what propels you forward. So you could say your experience with the music industry has created a lot of opening and a lot of wonder and a lot of capacity and like an avenue for you to launch yourself down. And there's like all this evidence of pullness everywhere. So this is so amazing. And then down that path, it starts to hit roadblocks. It's like you could say you've utilized a method in the healthiest sense. You've utilized a method. It's alchemized a new version of you to come up and out. And now he's like, cool, what's up? What's next? What's next? What's next? So new song creativity becomes the support of 10 artists to go and make new songs. And then it's like, okay, what's next? What's next? What's next? So we were talking last week about the exquisiteness of desire, not just the trap of it, but the exquisite other side of the coin, the exquisite aspect. It's like, what does my soul want to express next? What's the next natural up-leveling of this? And I'm drawn to the creativity of self. It's like if you just sit really quiet and go, what the fuck do I want? What has deep human relationship through parenting and spousal whatever, and the sacredness of those spaces as another vault of alchemy, another cauldron of like mixing shit up and stirring shit up and allowing it to blossom and grow and uplift, and the music industry stuff and whatever grief and elation in lots of different spaces. It's all changed you. Yeah, through the highs and the lows. Like you say, the clarification of those low experiences, helping them, for every morsel of loneliness you experience in life, which is all of us, there is an incredible appreciation, a proportionately, or you could say exponentially, linked expansion in your appreciation, your capacity to appreciate what it is to feel connected. And yeah, that means connection to self and to other. It's both. Both are important. Both are valid. So what is authentic? It's just like the importance of desire. What do you want? What has life caused you to desire? Because it's so, so beautiful. And then so we can just side table a conversation of like toxic desires and materialism, and I don't know, they're you could argue that let that run through you. Go through it. Move through it. Maybe it makes you a monster, but at some point you're going to turn the corner and want something of deeper substance. And I think that through that process you will clarify your relationship to yourself. So I do believe in kind of the powerful arena that it is to play with desire. And I think some of these traditional spiritual paths, I think they imply that as well. They're getting rid of desire, but they imply like if you can quiet things down enough and stop trying to fill the hole inside of you with external phenomenon, you'll find that you have a relationship with yourself that's incredibly fulfilling. And the best language I've come up with for that is that once that relationship's online, there's an awakening of consciousness, you could say. Or perhaps it's simpler and cruder and simpler and simpler that you just actually have a relationship with yourself now. And you didn't before. I was just constantly projecting outwards. Yeah. So starting from this new place then, we have a relationship with ourselves. We have more of a sense of what we're feeling and how we're doing. Then our desires become really interesting. And there's a natural, sensical nature to that there's a divine essence in all of us. And as we acquaint with that more and more and more, through the portal of presence, through the portal of the relationship to feeling, I get to know myself through seeing how I feel in certain spaces, locations, around, in the company of certain people, in certain functions, in certain roles. How do I feel? What's going on? So you actually have this relationship with yourself. You could call it the relationship between your higher and lower self, or your outer and inner world, or your mind and your inner world, or whichever language feels resonant. But then the desires that arise from that place can become something very, very different, in which you can, that's the paint. That's the big old tin of paint, or the diversity of palette that you have is your inner world. And you follow those like desires that come from that space, that manifest like blooming inside of you as inspiration bubbles, and you follow those. And this is what it is to follow your bliss or follow your inspiration, and you move from that to that to that. And a refined, intuitive living. And what's amazing is the more we just allow ourselves to do that, or sometimes it feels like we've got to kind of do a bit of work to get there, maybe that might be a true experience for somebody. But the more we do it, the more you realize it has innate buoyancy. There's this wellspring of well-being that exists by living that way. And so many of the things that you're afraid of, as far as like, what if I don't have enough emotional support? What if I don't have enough financial capital to float me through? we experience those as emotional turbulence in a primary kind of way. Yeah. There's empty bank accounts. Those things exist. There's the hunger in your gastrointestinal tract that you can experience through a relative lack of something. But for the most part, we're experiencing it through emotional turbulence. And it's when you connect with that stream of inspiration from just being yourself, which is why it's so rich to talk about the Paul of it all and the Luke of it all and the whomever, but deeply personalizing it in self, in the very human way of living. The more we align with something like that, we feel so innately full. There's a fullness, and you're like, shit, I'm not afraid to live this way. If I just show up and follow what feels right to myself, I cannot. It's incredible. It's like magic. Provisioning falls out of the sky, as if the universe has a vested interest in you living this way, and it resources you appropriately. And the work becomes about just de-weeding the garden of your inner world from thoughts that would tell you otherwise. They're not the enemy. They're helping you clarify what is true more and more. Every thought of lack helps inform the richness of a feeling of abundance. Helps you take the paint color in the palette of your inner world and get even clearer on what abundance feels like, what the vibration of abundance feels like, and then project it forward and outwards onto the canvas that is your life. And as cheesy as it might sound, the only thing left to do is to paint the masterpiece of self onto life. And sometimes it might look impactful and loud maybe, and even celebrity or something. And sometimes it might look incredibly quiet, because the highest expression of fullness that you can conjure up in that moment is that I'm so full no one even needs to know about it. I'm having such a fulfilling experience of this energy inside of me. The one that I was looking for 40 years was me, not her, wonderful though she might be, not them, divine as their essence is. But the one I was looking for was me, and it took a long while to normalize that fact. But more often than not, that's available to me now. And some of the tending to that means that if you need to stop what you're doing and scream, howl at the moon, or have a cry, then you do. It's quite natural. It's like the weather's it's raining right now. I'm going to allow it to rain. I can, shake my fist at the clouds if I want, but I've done that and I'm bored. It puts a very different slant on what healing is as well. For me, this paradigm of healing, it just keeps going. It's like, okay, well, what's the point then? Like, okay, I heal forever. Where the New Age movement talks about, healing our own wounds, getting to the bottom of that karmic bucket from all the things that happen from this life. And then there's past life healing. And then there's intergenerational healing from our bloodline. And then there's ancestral healing. And I've seen enough potent examples of all of that to say that, there's real juice in that. But when we zoom out and see that this doesn't end, you might say conveniently you go off the cliff of absolute enlightenment and there is a binary line you cross, a threshold you cross, and that's that. But I suspect not. If we want to talk about enlightenment, that's fine, but there will be ever higher levels of enlightenment to ascend to. There has to be, because this is infinity. And if it's infinity, then it doesn't stop. And so the notion of healing is a method we use. And we want to be sure it's not using us. And so if we're using healing and it goes forever, well, maybe this is actually just humaning. Uncomfortable phenomena rises in me at different times through different relationships with different people and things and places. And as it does, I've tried to push it away. I've tried to pretend it wasn't there. It all just delays my connection with myself, which is the only resourcing I could that's worth having.
But you've been through, like deep grief, as have I.
Yeah.
And I think some people don't. I mean, everybody's grief is everybody's grief, but I think some people don't go through. I mean, they have to. I guess everybody goes through losing their parents and things like that. So there's always that
grandparents,
level of
dogs. Usually they're
dogs.
Well, they are incredible. Opportunities to relate to grief.
Beautiful part of you I haven't seen from. They're really nice.
Dogs. Just do an accidental 15-minute monologue, and it's the puppy talk that gets you.
No, but it's like I guess what I'm saying is like, from a practical sense, like what would be your way of dealing with yourself previously versus how you would stay open to yourself now. I mean, I'm kind of half answering the question while I'm asking it, but I'm interested
in. Has
in
it changed?
Yeah, like what is when you go through deep experiences in your life, that's probably a better way to put it. What is now that you're on the other side of something, of a deep experience, looking back, what are the things that have changed? What are the messages that you would give to your previous self? Yeah, on the other side of that thing.
Well, in simple terms, the machine becomes more sophisticated in its ability to relate to itself. What does that mean in practical terms? So basically, like, I always wanted to allow myself to feel the reality of my inner world, which is to say my feelings are allowed to be there and allowed to be processed, to be fully felt. I'm going to cry every tear that I need to cry. As a specific example, that's not a bad jumping off point. I used to struggle to cry. I remember being in the end of high school and just going, I feel all this stuff and I can't seem to release it. Why don't I cry? I identify as this emotional cat. Why can't I? That's weird. I never noticed that. Playing with that. And in retrospect, there were rooms in the mansion of my heart that were closed off. And it took some of the big trauma that you, as my dear friend, know about. So you're inferring, it took the kicking down of those doors. You could argue that the gentle and intermediate levels of activation the universe was offering weren't enough. So it had to put a time bomb under things and blow things up. And so then those doors are blown open and now you must deal with it. So there's a sort of a gun to your head forced into it kind of element that I think everybody gets to, 25 years of spiritual practice at that point or something. And it was like, those rooms are invisible to me. Subtle ways they weren't, but man, there's no way that they were available fully. And, there's an elegance to the way that the story unfolds. And what's the rush? We never get it done, so what's the rush? So there is vastly more intimacy now with myself, and it looks like I can cry now. But yeah, man, there's a lot more intimacy with myself, and some of the reality is that I'm a lot more in touch with my yin elements, my feminine sensitivity, and that was confronting all by itself to go, whoa, I feel way more actual feminine energy inside of me. Like it felt like womanly in a way. Like this is a revelation in a lot of ways. And fascinatingly, the willingness to sit with that for a while and process it, and with the help of a coach and therapist sort of thing. It's a very specific phase with a very specific flavor of like, whoa, this is a lot of feminine energy and sensitivity moving through me. I wasn't labeling it feminine. It wasn't an intellectual thing. It felt like that. And just as a point of fascination for me and maybe for others, is it felt like I was becoming more feminine, but the willingness to sit with that and in some ways traverse it or normalize it or let it in and let it into the house and let it stay. And then realize like, wow, you're not alien, you're me. So it's just me in my own house. But the willingness to, I think it's about interfacing with, processing, and then integrating and embodying that aspect of myself. It's made me vastly more masculine in the way that's valuable to me. And that is that archetypally, and this is sort of tantric principle that should be held lightly and not objectively or literally. But at its core, masculine energy is about observation. It's the I, which functionalizes as providing a space for another thing to be seen. And so through allowing all this feminine energy in, it expanded my masculine to accommodate it. So you could say, just making this metaphor up on the fly, the house got bigger. And it had to ground down and have better foundations in order to accommodate its newfound largeness. So the house had to grow to accommodate all that feminine energy. In order to feel bigger and be more sensitive, it had to grow. So there was a fear of becoming more feminine and losing myself in it. And I was going to say thankfully or wonderfully or surprisingly or conveniently, but none of it. It all falls a bit short. It made me a bigger container. I have more spaciousness because I allowed that chaos to move through me.
And so you're just trusting in the process.
What else? What else can you do? So all this stuff's moving through you.
Yeah.
You can medicate. You can,
ignore,
repress until you can't anymore.
Yeah.
That's the reality. So that repression lands in the body. One of the wonderful insights in this period of the last, say, 4 years has been around. It lands in the body, in the physical body somewhere, and the middle ground, you say, between your energetic body, all this inner world stuff I'm talking about, and between your physicalized body, would be the nervous system. That's like the middle ground. And that's a fascinating thing because it's neuroscience and pop psychology and spirituality are doing this dance and finding a big old Venn diagram overlap in the middle. It's one of the flavors of our time, and it's exquisite. It's beautiful. For all the flaws with science, and it's colliding with, metaphysics and quantum physics, and whatever else. It's creating bridges. That's the value. It's the intellectual observations. Wow, we've been saying this for ages. Now you're saying this. It's the connection of it. So you mentioned last week this very logical brain. You want things proven out on multiple levels in order to integrate them, to make them have value enough to become part of you. Really, and this is a very convenient time for that part of you because vibrational reality is becoming more and more apparent all the time.
Well, I think for me too, it's like about discernment about what I'm going to bring on board, because you can be an open sponge and you can just absorb everything and believe everything. And I think I've been, maybe not in this life, but other lives, taken for a ride a bit,
I think we all do.
You just can't get around that.
Yeah. Well, no. Well, if you think about it, and maybe this is a bit, I don't know, an oversimplification. But if you think about if we're here to experience all the different personality traits of the divine, you could say. So God's this dude, this chick, whatever, and so vast is that personality that it's infinite. They want to experience these different aspects of their personality played out through personhood, through individuation. If one of those aspects was sovereignty, if one of the amazing commodifiable through experience qualities of yourself as the infinite was incredibly attractive to you and you wanted to experience it, you would individuate into a being, deprive part of yourself of elements of sovereignty, and then reintroduce them in ways that felt very, very real to that perspective. So if you felt imprisoned by the control of another, so much so you didn't even know it, and then something blew out in your life, usually in the form of some sort of trauma, and then you reacquaint with your own inner voice and your own sovereignty and go, oh, it has never felt so wonderful to follow a thing, and the thing I'm following is me. I'm talking to somebody that I admire in recent months on a topic like this. And it's like there are paths for some in which circumstances manifest such that you can't trust anybody. And you'll get bored eventually with the martyrdom of that, and you get bored with the martyrdom phase of it, burn that out. And you're like, every time I try to trust the preference or opinion of another, and I comply with it, it's like this external wisdom, and I go, okay, I must be fucking crazy. I'm gonna work with what's being offered. It's being offered by 5 or 6 voices. It makes sense. I want to be available to feedback and recorrection, course correction, and those things are certainly valid. Sitting with feedback is a really important part of human relating. But there are paths where it's just like, but I try to do it their way and it doesn't work. It falls over. I end up totally depleted and bereft of inner resourcing again. That keeps happening. You get bored with the martyrdom. You get bored with listening to other people. And the only things left is self-orientation. So that's a more vivid telling of what we just explained, a being that is forced down a track of sovereignty. What's amazing is you create some of the best people, because now you have a being that level of self-alignment has been necessitated. It's that or death. When you want God like a drowning man wants air, I heard that in my 20s and thought, wow, that's so intense and monastic and devout. It's like the death of everything, but too much work and no play makes Jack a dull boy. Like it's really the washing out of all of the person and just devotion. It's what it used to sound like, and now it lands very differently. Now it lands like nothing else is interesting. It's actually romantic between higher and lower self. That's the only relationship that matters. And just there's a part of that being that is individuated into this human that it feels incredibly real for. And it's being authentic with that part that stretches the being into be able to hold a bigger version of themselves, to expand the house, to have bigger accommodation inside of it, of spaciousness. And like that part that's reverent. The suffering in it is reverent. That's the matriculation of the data. It's beautiful and incredibly generous in what it offers. It's a necessary part of the expansion process. The feeling bit, the bit that lands in the body, the gnarly bit, the intense bit, the human aspects. It's so generous because of the expansion it provides to the rest of that being, you could say. So we don't overlook it. That would be the spiritual bypassy bit where it's like, come on, man, can't you see the higher perspective here? It's like, well, we can hold, to the extent that we can hold the blue sky around the cloud, but we recognize the cloud serves a purpose. It's really a really beautiful part of it. Like we were talking about last week, you would never tell somebody to get off grief. It's so important. There's different schools of thought around that. And yeah, intuitively it might be time to start to switch stories or whatever, but I'll make this discernment. When the feeling has been really felt, we can begin to tell a different story. We don't want to get off it before the feeling's felt. And reverse engineering, we can use storytelling and language to get in touch with a feeling. This is really what I think the therapeutic arena is about. We're going to use language to get in touch with a feeling or a neurological block stuck in your amygdala or something. We're going to use language to walk down that path to access it so we can feel it. But the language and dialogue in that instance is the tool we're using. It's not using us, ideally. We're using it. We're going to feel this. It will uplift and transform us, and then we'll move on. And then you can be of use to other people walking that path. And then you can actually practice gratitude for what's going on. Gratitude before then can be a bit of a distraction and get in the way. Okay.
You got a question?
I do.
Okay.
It's
that's a good
it's lengthy point. With some, so I'll just read it all as it is. I haven't actually read it all the way through yet, but this one feels right. How do family patterns work generationally and within partner relationships? Does the most conscious nervous system of the family draw in experiences to be felt and healed, regardless of which side of the family the energy or behavioral pattern is coming from? For example, my 5-year-old has always tended to pick and bully my youngest. It feels beyond typical sibling rivalry. It brings up feeling of flight in me. So I suppose fight or flight, so withdrawal and disappearing, maybe paralysis, I suppose they mean. It brings up a feeling of flight in me, and I too feel bullied and have the urge to get away.
Great question.
There's actually more, but that's plenty to load you up.
To chew on. I mean, in me, whenever I've been parenting, I was quick to realize that it was just the things in me that were being triggered. So if I'm feeling like I'm agitated or it's something in me that is restless, it's an energy in me that is calling to be processed. And it's uncomfortable, but it was an extension of, and it still is, like you say, it's ongoing. I still get grumpy all the time. Yeah, but if you can see it as an opportunity, like it's literally like a spotlight, I've found. If you can see it as a spotlight, hold it lightly, don't judge yourself too much, but see it as an opportunity for you to have a light shone in a space where there's attention to be placed and love to be extended into of yourself, and then trying to understand what that is inside you that's being agitated. Triggered is a great word, but agitated inside you. I think whenever we see, I can only speak for myself. Whenever I see any injustice, I always want to try to balance that back out by, adding a finger to. But for me, you
mean as a reactionary, as a reflex in you,
as a reflex,
for better or worse, sometimes worse. Am I reading that right? Yeah.
Yeah, I want to try and balance things back out. But I think there's always an inherent trust that you have to have that things are occurring for the benefit of everybody involved in the interaction. And so whether that's one child is needing to express, it's a great question. I think like there's always a balance point where you don't want your child to be harmed, or you don't want your child harming another kid or a sibling. But I also think too, like explaining to the child about how the other person feels when that behavior is happening. It becomes a cumulative thing over time. I don't know if it's intergenerational, or I imagine we are the regulators of our children's nervous system. So if there is heightened stress or anxiety in the home, then the kids are going to pick up on that. If there's any, I remember when we had our first kid, that idiom of you re-experience your childhood again, and children are our greatest teachers. Like that rang true really, really loudly after the first few years. I don't know whether it's an intergenerational thing, but for me, everything is about the perspective that you can find in the moment. Helping the agitator to understand what their effects are is really important. And then sometimes, I've had moments where I go into a situation and I think it's one way and it's not actually. That situation, the agitation has been a response to something else. And I've missed the something else that's been the lead up to it. And I've always found like your perspective is always going to be the most powerful thing that you can offer to your kids.
You mean language? Like communicating how you see it?
Yeah. And also in the way that you communicate it. I think the energy that you bring to something is always going to be really important. They say that, like, you know, your children always are modeling you as a way of being. And I think the way that you treat yourself, you know, I'm still learning that, you know, the way that your children treat themselves is not going to be how you treat them. It's going to be how you treat yourself. Yeah. So there's a lot in that, you know, like there's a lot of responsibility in that to truly own your part in how your children are. I don't know if that answers the question or not. I feel like
that's what the person's pitching to, actually, is the relationship between the way they handle the situation and the way the kids are playing it out as well. So that the intergenerational component is inherent, like functionally.
Yeah. Then yes.
Well, yeah. It sounds inherently complex and perhaps relatable. But what's evident is a lot of self-reflection in there as well. So that this is a parent who's making real energetic expenditure to bring consciousness to the parenting dynamic, and it infers accountability on, like, I know I'm part of this.
Yeah.
And so that posturing will lubricate things. That puts you ahead of the game in so many ways. And what do you know? It's uncomfortable. That's actually wonderful that you're present to the discomfort in your household.
The very nature of the question and the fact that it's being asked is obviously speaks volumes to the you know, alertness or the awareness of the person.
Yeah. And I mean, maybe the process itself is swimming along really well. So an invitation to sit with the fact that actually maybe, given where I've come from, given where my spouse has come from, given where our children have come from and where we're all headed and what we're coexisting with, we're actually doing an exemplary job.
Another thing that when younger parents have come to me, friends, you know, who are like having their first kids and stuff, and they ask for advice because everyone's giving them advice that they haven't asked for. A lot of the time it's just follow your intuition. That's my advice. It's like you actually know exactly what to do. It's crazy. Like, we seem to have it trained. Maybe it's just me speaking from personal experience, but I feel like school trained that out of me. I was a very intuitive young kid, and then school trained that idea out of me into kind of reciting things that I'd learned, and you get rewarded for that. You don't get rewarded for having any kind of intuitive
sovereign idea.
Yeah, and I think I don't know. What do you think of the idea that the soul chooses the parents? Do you put any power in that?
Yeah.
You think so?
I don't know what else there.
So then you can't. So from that perspective,
randomity? No way. Like, yeah, sometimes, but then other times, luck of the draw, baby.
So to that end, you know, like you are their chosen. Oh, the other thing that happened, I had this great realization when my son was about 2, I reckon, and it helped so much. It was just a perspective shift where I looked at him like he was an alien who'd only been here for 2 years, and he had no idea how this place worked and was new to our customs, which is kind of true. And for some reason, I don't know why, that really turned something on in me. It was like, oh, it's my job to show him around and show him how things work and how I see the world and how I see how things work and stuff. It was just a way in. That's the way in that I got, you know.
I think that's really cool. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
You could argue that it's like, oh, they're idiots that I need. There would be ill ways to hold that.
Sure.
But again, it's about the energy signature of it. And underneath it, it's like, no, I've recognized maybe the transient nature of our role dynamic, that we've done many things, whatever, you know, that kind of like convenient reincarnation narrative, which has efficacy, but it's not necessary, I don't think. I think we can hold it lightly. It doesn't have to be really objective fact kind of stuff. But you can feel that I'm going to play this role to the best of my ability for this being. and I guess be childlike in your posturing. It's like there are no dumb questions. This is all so new. What comes to mind for me, apart from just the elegance of you doing that, and the real power is in that it felt great and it alleviated things. It's like, well, that would be an example of following inspiration. There's beauty in that. And also teaching him how to follow inspiration as an adult by being the embodiment of it. Like you said, you're not teaching them how, what's the language? You're not teaching them how to treat themselves. They'll treat themselves exactly as you treat yourself right here and now. I just butchered that language, but you know what I mean.
I hope that helps. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it's
a beautiful question.
Yeah.
Like that person's a great
deliberate.
That person's a great parent already. Like to even ask that question, to be that aware and to be that open, like speaks volumes of the beauty of that person. Everybody's beautiful, but you know what I'm saying. Like they're paying particular care to that energy and to that moment.
Yeah, that's what moves through me too. Is it sounds like there is a genuine space holding for the children. In that there's a welcoming in of their wonderful angelic bits and the other as well, and that I want to be able to hold space for all of it, but it's challenging me, but I really want to. So if there's an unspoken dialogue, through the eye gaze, whatever, between parent and child of saying like, all of you is welcome here, it's going to challenge me, but that is the addendum of this household, that there isn't a part of you have to take elsewhere. You can choose to, electively, sure, but there's no part of you that's not welcome here. And the balance that we all encounter is then you've also got to have boundaries. We do live in bodies that need oxygen, that need hydration and sustenance, and they're also hurtable if we lash out, all those things. So somehow a full welcoming of all of them, and also an honouring of boundaries, like the hard edges of the container as well.
Well, the kids will find those, right, and push into them.
They
say for safety. I don't know whether that's true or not, but I feel like it comes up. It comes into that thing we talked about last week, where it was like, how much are you parenting, and how much are you just regurgitating the parenting that you received? But yeah, I feel like there's truth in that. They push into those boundaries to feel safe, to know where their edges are, to know that's where the line is and that's where you hold. And I think it's important. I'm not sure kids have as many boundaries these days as they used to. And it's, again, it's just, we all parent to the hurts that we received from our childhood that we don't want to repeat. And sometimes that looks like a big open field.
If you were, to evidence the power in what you said, if you were to reverse engineer it and say, okay, well, if you took away all the boundaries and let the kid do whatever they want, they'd have incredible freedom and creative freedom. Like there would be an increase, an uptake in those things. I think what comes to mind for me straight away is you'd pretty quickly lose the definition of childhood. So if I say to my kids, like, I know it's hard. I know that it can feel like I'm telling you what to do. And that's a genuine reflection point, because it's like, that doesn't feel right when they're playing out their own sovereignty stuff with me and going like, it's like, you're bossy, you're always telling me what to do. And that never gets washed over. Not because I'm a good boy or a good dad in that instance, but because it hurts. It's like, oh, right, like you feel a lack of freedom here, and that's not the idea. But inversely, if I stop being a parent, then they don't get to be a kid. And yeah, we can totally unpack what being a parent is in the healthiest manifestation of that. But if the boundaries stop, then they have to become an adult pretty fast. And you can say, we'll just give them all the resourcing or whatever. Like you feed them and then give them complete reign. But there is something about the no's that provide the boundaries. I love playing with, okay, we talk a lot about boundaries in our culture these days, but what about the thing within that fencing? What's the thing inside of it? It infers that it's precious. It infers that it's breakable. It infers that it can be guided or misguided. There's a thing inside it that's fragile and incredibly valuable. and anything worth setting a boundary around. So often that's self, that I'm going to set boundaries so that I'm less interferable with, like people can't fuck with me as easy, and therefore I can retain more of my own innate energy and then adventure out into the world with discernment and power, resourcing. And in this instance, like with kids, we provide a container lovingly and with a view towards fostering an environment where the most of them can come up and out in a sustained way for the rest of their life, so that really when they leave the home, you know, it's a trickle effect, but when they leave the home, that they will be they'll do that for themselves.
Yeah.
So if you take away all those boundaries, they're fending for themselves now. Yeah. So a lot of that freedom can look like adultification. And intuitively, I feel like that's what you mean. We're almost referring to like a different time where boundaries were. If we provide, kids get safer and more relaxed with more holding. And yes, sometimes the holding looks like, hey, you can't run on we don't play cricket on the freeway. Or whatever. Yeah.
I feel like also it offers lived experience for them of what it's like to live inside a dynamic of humans.
Yeah. You mean external, what I would regard as external consideration. So considering the plight, the journey, the perspective. Like you and I are sitting opposite each other. I'm in my meat suit, swimming about the world, and so are you. And human connection is about going, wow, I've got this going on, and then actually in some ways hitting pause, or maybe when you're a bit more deft of foot you can do both at the same time, but being able to create a space to consider and hold and allow for like what's happening inside your perspective.
Yeah.
So from whatever cocktail of things you are, as a straight dude, as a Kiwi, as a, you know, all of the, you know, whatever you are in the zodiac or the, you know, all the different archetypal systems of things, like what is that like for you? And to have someone show interest in that is how you build, that's how you do intimacy. Something that's fallen in for me in recent years is we need air, food, water, shelter, intimacy. You could say love, you could say neuroregulation, but if you go and look at a human being that's really isolated, what did I hear recently?
I think they say that.
It's like the equivalent of 12 beers or 16 beers or something like that.
Yeah, if you remove love, intimacy, like even touch.
Yeah.
We need touch, we need hugs, and we need... Yeah. But all these mechanisms, as much as we are spiritual beings, there's still, this meat suit has mechanisms that need to be addressed.
Yeah. And from the spiritual point of view, if you're going to take this one thing and split it into all these little parts for the sake of relationship, then we've actually got to practice relationship, or we're too adrift. We're too nebulous. I think that's the right word. I think that maybe the best thing to say is like that we honor the question asker in this instance. That's we honor the challenge and the precipice of where you are.
Yeah, I mean the fact, like you just stated, the fact that it's a challenge means there's an opportunity.
Yeah. And the willingness to reflect upon your own shit in that and hold yourself with love, because that's the other part. You're not just kicking our own ass all the time, because then our children will kick their own ass all the time. You go, oh, what was the point of all that? Really, that is an example of unconscious intergenerational trauma, where you might not have advanced it much because you had a problem with anxiety and kicking your own ass all the time, sort of like neurotic abuse of self, and then maybe that again didn't get moved, that remained largely unconscious, and now the child picks up the baton and moves that down the line until someone goes, no more. And no more looks like a defiant self-love, dismantling of like all that, you know, tearing oneself to shreds and then building something anew.
Yeah, I almost feel like, reflecting back on my childhood, you know, all parents are doing the best that they can with what they've got. But I feel like the greatest thing I've been able to offer my kids is to be vulnerable with them, to tell them I don't know, or to be willing to go into a space with them not knowing where we're going to end up. Because I don't feel like my parents were comfortable And they're amazing people, like, deeper than your average bear. But I'm not sure that, they're younger than me too, right? I'm not sure they had the mechanism at the time to be able to offer me that space to go, well, let's talk about it and dive, and I'll talk to you about my experience of existence and you can talk to me about yours. But, I do that I try to do it almost weekly with my daughter. She froths it. Dad, when are we going to have another big talk? She calls it, or something, I think. And it's like she feels deep connection in that moment. She feels less alone. She feels less weird because Dad's weird too. Or, she starts to understand that, this is lifing. Lifing is we're all a bit odd. And the sooner you get used to that, the better. Because everybody else is thinking the same thing.
Yeah, that's particularly beautiful. It's a fun little example of the platonic romance between daddy and daughter. And it's also, I think there's probably a layer to that too that's like, this is a sacred thing that you do and it needs doing, but you put it in the right place too. There's a sort of an underbelly to that that's like, this is so special. We don't do this 4 times a day, and we don't typically.
Yeah, that's
nor
nice.
do we
I
need
like that.
to, but also we put it in the right place. That's the bit I really want to say. They're soft and beautiful parts. That's what keeps them soft and beautiful as well, is that they're not spilled out all over the floor. They're well contained. And like water, if you break an aquarium and the water just goes everywhere and it's like it doesn't even exist anymore. It spreads so thin. There's no majesty. There's no magic. It's all
just dead fish.
Just a bunch of dead fish. All right.
Question for you. Oh, this one's really nice. You got really good questions. Susie? I don't know.
First one, I think.
Suze. In love feels like an idea we are sold, a space of infatuation and sacrifice of self to another. Loving someone and being loved by someone feels like the truest way to love, prioritizing peace, safety and connection with each other, coming together, connecting on an energetic spiritual plane without losing your connection to self. Rather, connection to self is heightened in this space, an even higher awareness of myself in relation to this person and how my body feels when we connect, that their love for me reflects how I love myself. I'm not sure there's a question in there. I just thought it was really beautiful. I think, let's go back to the beginning. So, beautiful question from Suze. In love feels like an idea we are sold, a space of infatuation and sacrifice of self to another.
So perhaps a discussion on the differentiation between that and what she goes on to say.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is a very beautiful question. And I think that separates love into kind of 2 archetypal paths. And that obviously creates a really healthy dialogue around who are we? How do we define these things? And where are we heading? There is something like romantic love, or that's the one that I want to be with. That's, my nervous system gets excited when I'm around them. My heart blossoms into sort of ecstatic states when I see them or whatever, talk to them on the phone, versus maybe something that's more about neuroregulation, interdependency, healthy support towards, positive growth and stabilization in your life. Like, there's a whole lot of dialogue in the zeitgeist about the chemical attraction we feel to people that reflect our childhood and what our parents were like, and versus what could look a whole lot less poetic and dramatic and rom-com, but something chiefly built upon neuroregulation. Sometimes that could look like the death of romance, actually, that I'm just going to find my best friend that helps soothes my nervous system. Did I say soothes my nervous system? Whoops. that helps soothe my nervous system. And it can look like the death of romance. And I feel sort of, in some ways, blissfully floating in between these paradigms, because I believe in my heart still that both are possible, to experience that kind of romance where somebody's, I don't know, you feel polarized by somebody, they really excite you, they feel valuable to be around. I think rather than defining what the healthiest form of romance can look like, or loving relationship can look like, just honoring the question, honoring the desire to discern between those things. And we are up to where we're up to in that process. Yeah, I find that topic a bit intoxicating. What I would love to say, and she's implied it all, she's answered the question, I think. I don't know that there's much to add, obviously, to celebrate it, but I could also talk about it for days because I do love it. But the idea of falling in love with self first. So earlier in this sitting, I went into like looking outside of yourself for the one. And then perhaps having mini discoveries and some bigger ones that give way, but eventually normalizing that I am the one. And, getting over the ego trip of that, or the fear of the ego trip of that, and just being with it. It's like, wow, this romantic intonation of me searching for this one who would feel just so right to pair with, and then working out that was actually me the whole time. And it's like magnificently liberating when we get a taste of the real version of that. But when you say it out loud, sometimes it just sounds really kitschy and lame. That's like you're the one that you've been looking for the whole time. Maybe all profound truths are a bit like that. They sound so simple and available that you're it, babe. You're the one you've been looking for the whole time. You're God. You're this expression of perfect love. You're your own purpose. You're your own masterpiece, like all these things. And then there are moments where you build up enough of the opposite to create a contrast. You experience enough turbulence that coming home to that is about as good as it gets. So then what does actual human relationship become? Well, the best I've got on that front is that this inner romance arises. And some of the machinations look like I have big feelings and I create space in my life and in my inner world just to feel them where they're welcomed in, a bit like we were talking about with the parenting before, like welcoming the child in all its forms. For me, it actually, coming from in some ways tantric background, as far as like tantric principles rather than the sexual layers, but more the energetic layers around, like, I create space for my intense feelings, and those intense feelings, that aspect of me is incredibly grateful. And it adopts a form of like elation and expansion, and that chaos gets integrated as feels like I feel realer, I feel more alive, I feel more myself, and that's kind of the reward. But there is a dance between intense feelings and then them feeling seen, just like we might say between a man and a woman. She desires to be welcomed in as she is, and the archetypal wounding of the feminine, they say, is like the feminine feels like I'm too much, and then there's me saying to myself, no, you're not. I like you like this. I don't even need to understand you in order to let you in. And then the question begs, well, if that's the masculine side serving the feminine side of myself, what's happening the other way around? Well, it's more challenging for me to define, but the authenticity, the realness, pain's beautiful, because when you strip back the narrative around it and it's just pain, nobody would really like choose pain for pain's sake. So when we're in deep pain, it's really real. It's really authentic. And that enriches this big, expansive, creative masculine side of us to find something that feels deeply motivating. I really care about creating a space for this to be felt because it's so real and such a part of me. It's so innate that it really finds itself, and that's the value. Anyway, these two parts inside of me become these romantic polarizing entities. And then human relationship can become the projection outwards of that. So I am romance itself in that way, in the way that I cycle and regulate myself and take care of myself and admire aspects of myself. I kind of become romance itself, and I occupy that vibration enough and it projects forward. The idea that we used to have the cart before the horse, in that I'll find this romance and then I'll find that deep connection inside of myself. It's like, no, let's find it first. And I just gave a detailed, perhaps too detailed version of what that is, but let's find it inside of ourselves. I become romance in this way. And the only value is that it feels fucking amazing to live that. And then you do, and then you find romantic circumstances are drawn to you magnetically. And then you create a relationship on that basis. So coming right back to what the question asker says, offers, rather eloquently, is that they point you back to yourself all the time. Of course they do, when it's right. And yeah, there's allowed to be mess and disturbance and falling off the horse and getting back on the horse and all those things, natural things. But of course they point you back to that relationship with yourself, because that's what drew this in the first place. It's resonant with it. So then it takes the form in our human lives of like, your lover, you're the one, and then that very vibration gets projected out into the universe and calls in somebody who is also the one to themselves. Now we got fun. In the old model, it was kind of like, let's fulfill each other. So it's like 60% plus 40% equals maybe one whole person. And now we've got 1 + 1 = infinity, is the premise of that idea. One whole being plus another whole being equals infinity. Yeah. And they're capable of so much more, but it can be a little bit scary going down that path, because it's the death of some elements of romance. It can feel a little dry as one adjusts and transitions to like stopping looking for somebody to fulfill me. His name will come to me in a second. It's a Buddhist teacher who talks about not everybody wants enlightenment. He might be careful. Careful. It's not that exciting over here. That's him talking. Because they're less tortured and poetic and cleaner and more. Love's already there. You're not looking for it anymore. Thankfully, there's still growth. So if romance as it was kind of dies this death, because you discover you are romance, you're living it and it's so fulfilling, but it stops being a search outwardly, then what's relationship actually for? I think that's perhaps what she's asking, maybe. I think it's a beautiful question to ask. What is it actually for then? And it's like, well, I'm not that interested in what I used to be interested on that frontier. So the only thing relationship has to offer is if it can deepen my relationship with myself. So when she says pointing back to yourself, that's the thing. When it becomes kind of like the relationship with self on steroids, because of the vulnerability and because of the openness and because caring about something so much as in this other being and the relationship itself. So we still have vulnerability and intimacy, that's inherent. But the only relationship worth having is the one that can actually deepen your relationship with yourself, because your relationship with yourself has become the fuel of persistence. It's become the reason to get out of bed in the morning. And make no mistake, it's an exquisite reason to get out of bed in the morning. The best that there is for God to be God's self and to get to create from there. And so that's a very different place to contemplate relationship. And yeah, in a much more modern sense and a neuroscientific sense, it informs like this person then has to complement my daily neuroregulation, because anything else would be taking me away from myself. It doesn't mean you never fight, but it means there is a felt interest, like you were saying with your daughter before, that wow, someone's really interested in these deeper aspects of me. And you can experience intimacy in the moment because we're pausing and we're really considering the experience of another and demonstrating it and rupture and repair and all the wonderful things we talk about.
I feel if I was going to add anything to that,
Yeah,
beautifully put, man.
cool.
If I was going to add anything to that, I'd probably say, from my perspective, we've all got blind spots, always, it would seem. But with the help of a partner who's interested in constructively encouraging your expansion, you can become aware of those spots that you're blind and search into those spaces as well, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe you already said that and I just was too dumb to...
No. As I said, yeah, a lot of words. But that would tie in really, really beautifully with that's deepening of your relationship with yourself, discovering the blind spots. And we're not just a person. We've got to entertain the fact that we might be divine. It comes up a lot in the pod. So it's a underpinning assertion that we're all very special creatures, but we're all that. So in some ways we're not special at all, insofar as it elevates us above anybody else. So there's that paradox.
So do you have to be elevated to be special?
So the blind spots don't stop. So this is a person who's going to, the self-discovery is unmasking the blind spots, and here's somebody who can, self-discovery on steroids.
Beautiful.